Chapter 8, April, Brenton's Mom. I have never known my son to act irrationally, but I must say I was a bit shocked and angry when he gave away all his computer equipment. Sure, my husband gets it for free through his work, but even so, it was thousands of dollars worth of electronics. You don't just give that away, and Brenton loved his computer. When I asked him why he gave it all away, he sort of shrugged and acted like I couldn't possibly understand. That's not like my son either. I thought he was going through one of those pre-teen age phases. Maybe this was his way of rebelling against his father. I should have punished him. Should have. You can always say that, can't you? Only later did I find out the real reason he gave his computer away. Sam's mom. I went upstairs to change the sheets one day, and there was this fancy computer system sitting on Sam's desk. It was much nicer than the old PC we got from the Air Force. I asked him where he got it, and he said Brenton gave it to him. Well, that didn't sound right. You don't just give somebody something like that. I told Sam he had to give it back, but he said Brenton's father got lots of free computers and he insisted that Brenton didn't want it. I called up Mrs. Damagacci and she said it was true. She didn't know why Brenton didn't want it anymore. We figured boys will be boys. Sam Dawkins, grade 5. My dad and I had a pretty hot game. My plan from the opening was to get my pieces onto good squares as soon as I could. I did that, and Dad actually made a few blunders. He let his rook get caught in front of his pawns so they couldn't advance. By the time we reached the middle of the game, I was 2 pawns ahead, so I brought out my queen and let her have run of the board. Dad always told me that one of the best forms of defense is to attack, so I did. After I captured his rook, he offered to call it a draw. I could have gone for the win, but I guess I just didn't have that killer instinct yet. But I had my first draw. Dad said I wasn't just a wood pusher anymore. That's what you call a weak player, a wood pusher. We started another game. Miss Rasmussen, 5th grade teacher. There were all kinds of rumors swirling around, and I wasn't sure how to handle them. You don't want to punish students based on some silly gossip in the school paper or what somebody wrote in the bathroom stall. I was talking about it in the teacher's lounge, and one of the other teachers suggested I give the class a surprise test. That would tell me how much the students were remembering from their homework. Normally, I don't like the whole idea of giving tests for students this age, but it seemed like a good idea. I made up a multiple-choice test that covered just about everything we had studied all year. The solar system, the explorers, Arizona geography, everything. The children were a little surprised when I sprung it on them, to say the least. Sam Dawkins, grade 5. It was totally unfair. I thought Miss Rasmussen tells us all year long that she doesn't believe in tests. Then bang, out of nowhere, she hits us with this huge test. Miss Rasmussen, 5th grade teacher. Well, the class did pretty well as a whole. I was pleased about that. Brenton got every question right. No surprise there. Sam and Kelsey failed completely. Their grades were the worst in the class. It was like they had never seen the material before. But they had been turning in excellent homework. That made me suspicious. They should have done better. What's most surprising, though, was that Judy got a C. She's an extremely bright girl who turned in perfect homework every night. There was no reason why she shouldn't have done better. I had no choice but to believe the rumors about cheating were true. I was preparing to present the evidence to the principal. Judy Douglas, grade 5. I couldn't believe I got a C. I never got a C before in my life. I was so ashamed. Instead of bringing the test home to show my parents, I stuffed it in the back of my locker. If anybody asked where it was, I decided I would pretend it was lost. As it turned out, I never had to pretend anything. After what happened, I felt silly for even caring about what I got on the test. Kelsey Donnelly, grade 5. Snick was absent the day we got the test back. I thought maybe he stayed home from school because he knew he failed, but he was absent the next day too. Then Miss Rasmussen came in after lunch the second day, and she was crying. She told us that Snick's father was killed. I started crying. I know what it's like to lose your dad. Sam Dawkins, grade 5. I'd rather not talk about what happened to Dad. Is that okay? Miss Rasmussen, 5th grade teacher. I was told that Sam's father was driving an armored vehicle with 3 other soldiers and it was ambushed in the middle of the night. Sam's father and the soldier sitting next to him in the front seat were killed. The other 2 soldiers in the back were severely injured. It was a horrible tragedy, the kind you simply can't prepare for. Sam wasn't the only child who was upset. Kelsey had lost her father when she was younger, and she was distraught. Counselors were brought in to help us all get over our grief. We made cards. We gave Sam lots of hugs when he came back to school. What else could we do? It's not like a wound like that will heal in time. Judy Douglas, grade 5. Brenton and I were very careful about what we said to Snick after his father was killed. He knew how we felt about the war. We didn't want to say anything that might be insensitive. It was just so sad. Snick was the only one who didn't cry. Maybe he got it out of his system at home. We all felt so sorry for him. Kelsey Donnelly, grade 5. I was so angry. We had met Snick's dad. He came into our class that day and told us what it was like to be a soldier. He was a good guy. Now he was dead. For what? It wasn't like World War II when America had to save the world from Hitler. It was more like Vietnam. It was a war for nothing. And Snick's dad died for nothing. Just like my dad died for nothing when I was little. It was stupid. I couldn't stop crying. It was like the world stopped turning. Sam Dawkins, grade 5. Dad and I were in the middle of a game when it happened. I just let the pieces sit there on the squares where they were. I'll never move them. Ever. I don't know if there's an afterlife, but if there is, someday my dad and I will finish that game. Miss Rasmussen, 5th grade teacher. It was a difficult time for everyone that first week after we got the news, especially for Sam and his mother. Mr. Dawkins' remains were flown back home a few days later. Just about everyone in the school attended the funeral. After what happened, I couldn't bring myself to go to Principal Wilson with my suspicions of cheating. I just couldn't do it. It was getting close to the end of the year. For better or worse, I decided to let it slide. Judy Douglas, grade 5. I thought that we wouldn't use Belch after Snick's dad died. It would have been rude to go over to his house at a time like that, but Snick invited us over. He needed the company, I guess, and we were all addicted to Belch at that point. Sam's mom. It was an awful time for us after my husband died, of course, but people were so wonderful, coming around to see if we were all okay, cooking us dinners and so on. Sam's friends, Brenton and Judy and Kelsey, came over every day after school and worked on their homework together up in his room. One day I walked in without knocking, and they all looked at me like I'd caught them doing something wrong, but they were just using the computer Brenton had given Sam. I backed out of there and left them alone. Judy Douglas, grade 5. After the funeral, there were a lot of outsiders around. I don't just mean tourists. I'm talking about official-looking guys with suits or military uniforms. It was creepy. One day I was riding my bike, and one of these guys stopped me. He didn't say anything about Snick's dad. He started asking me questions about computers. My parents always warned me to be careful around strangers. I yelled at the man and told him to leave me alone or I'd scream. I pedaled away as fast as I could go. Now I was really paranoid. The police or FBI were after us for sure. Kelsey Donnelly, grade 5. Snick was depressed because of his dad, and who can blame him? Brenton's head was up in the clouds somewhere like always, and Judy was a basket case. I was worried about her the most. She claimed some weird guy stopped her on the street, and he was probably an FBI agent. I thought that maybe she was hallucinating. That girl just can't deal with stress. Well, somebody had to take charge, so I called a meeting. Yeah, me, at my house, for the 4 of us. We had a long talk. There were so many things we had to talk about. First, I reminded them all that Belch was supposed to make our lives easier, but with all the problems and worrying, it made everything harder. And we were spending more time worrying about Belch and trying to keep it a secret than we would have if we just did our stupid homework without the stupid machine. I reminded them all that we had a pact to keep our secret, and that one of us must have spilled the beans. Which one was it? I knew it wasn't me. They all looked at each other for a long time. Judy said it wasn't her. Snick said it wasn't him. We all looked at Brenton. He just looked down and said real quietly, "It was me. I'm sorry." Brenton Damagachi, grade 5. I guess I can admit this now. I was the one who called in the tip to the police hotline, and I leaked the item to the school paper. This is what I told them, and it was the truth. I had given it a lot of thought. It may not have been morally wrong for me to use Belch for my homework, but it was probably morally wrong for Snick and Kelsey because they were using it as a crutch. It was morally wrong for me to break the agreement we had made, but it would also have been morally wrong for me not to break it and let them continue using Belch. It was a lose-lose situation. In the long run, it would be better for Snick and Kelsey to do their own homework, but I didn't have the courage to confront them directly. In that regard, I am a coward. Sam Dawkins, grade 5. I couldn't believe it. How could he do that to us? Judy Douglas, grade 5. I thought I was going to pass out. My life was over. Kelsey Donnelly, grade 5. I thought Snick and Judy were going to kill him. They were so mad. I told them they were being stupid. What was done was done. Brenton made the machine. He could do anything he wanted with it. It was our own fault. There was nothing we could do about it now. Even if Brenton hadn't told anyone, somebody would have found out eventually. I threw my arm around him and told him I forgive him. Sam Dawkins, grade 5. We had a lot of angry words, but what was done. We had to decide what to do next. Should we turn ourselves in? Run away from home? For the time being, we decided to stop using Belch and hope the whole thing would blow over. Kelsey Donnelly, grade 5. I called Judy that night. I had to say something else that had been on my mind for a long time, and it was so obvious it was ridiculous. I told her that she liked Brenton and Brenton liked her. They might as well come out in the open about it. Well, she denied it, of course. She said I was crazy. I didn't care. I knew I was right. I may not know much about math or geography, but I know when two people like each other. Brenton and Judy were going out with each other, and they didn't even know it. Judy Douglas, grade 5. Well, I told Kelsey she was nuts about me and Brenton, but I will say this. Kelsey really impressed me. I was proud of her taking over like that, and I was glad we had the meeting. It made me feel a little better the next day in school. But then Miss Rasmussen handed me a note that said Brenton, Snick, Kelsey, and I were invited to a meeting in Principal Wilson's office the next week. Invited. This was it. We were going to be suspended, kicked out of school. My life was over. Sam Dawkins, grade 5. So Judy says we should just admit everything and tell the truth about Belch. She says that when criminals plead guilty to a crime, they get a lighter punishment than if they claim they're innocent. I tell her she's crazy. She'll never get into law school someday if they ever find out she cheated her way through 5th grade. She's upset, of course. She says she never wanted to use a machine to do her homework in the first place. Then Brenton says it might be possible to destroy any evidence that Belch ever existed. He could erase all our data and wipe the hard drive clean. Now that sounded like a good idea to me. We were in agreement. We decided to go into Principal Wilson's office the next week and deny everything. We'd pretend there was never any such thing as a homework machine.